Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 27th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. To follow up the last classic I talked about, I knew I would have to pull out all the stops, so I went with another album that I personally feel like is S-tier 2000s hip-hop. Of course, I'm referring to Little Brother and their monumental second studio album, The Minstrel Show. The groundbreaking North Carolina trio at this time was comprised of rapper Big Pooh, MC and vocalist Fonte, and the celebrated producer Ninth Wonder. While Big Pooh and Fonte have both been notable figures in hip hop for the last 20 years, if you're a younger, more casual listener, there's a chance the only one of these names to ring a bell for you is Ninth Wonder. This would most likely be attributed to how prominent and in demand he's been for the last couple decades, making top tier beats for the likes of Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, Destiny's Child, Ludacris, Mary J. Blige, Masta Ace, as well as Erykah Badu and De La Soul, and many more. However, Big Pooh and Fonte have both stayed pretty consistent in their solo endeavors, especially Fonte, who not only co-hosts the Questlove Supreme podcast, but he's also been a giant advocate of presenting hip-hop in a way that's fun and accessible for young children. He's even been featured on Sesame Street. While this group inevitably would have problems that I don't believe have ever been resolved to this day, the chemistry they had on their projects up until the split was undeniable. They also would embody an inspiring overnight success story where they went from being a relatively underground act whose fan base was largely internet-based to Ninth Wonder doing an instrumental on Jay-Z's The Black Album. This actually would occur the same year that Little Brother released their debut album, The Listening, which I'm sure got him the placement since The Listening already displayed Ninth's inhuman ear for samples and flips. However, if you do listen to that quality debut, you'll find a lot more to gravitate to than just the funky production. Fonte was already honing his pen as one of the most witty and talented wordplay-centered rappers in the game, and rapper Big Pooh always provides a great contrast with his deeper but easy to listen to voice. While The Listening has a lot of classic material on it, for me, Little Brother's masterpiece was their 2005 follow-up, The Minstrel Show. Everyone is firing on all cylinders here, with Big Pooh and Fonte putting down some of their most memorable verses to date, which flow over Ninth Wonder's flawless set of instrumentals. This is all delivered through this hilarious concept inspired by the Spike Lee movie Bamboozled. Of course, if you know anything about minstrel shows, you may be thinking there isn't anything inherently funny about the concept, and you wouldn't be wrong. This is the type of dark comedy you have to be a bit mature to listen to, because I could easily see some moron saying, hey, why is it fine when black people make fun of blackface in minstrel shows, but not when white people do it? You know, the type of people who compare whiteface to blackface and genuinely don't see the difference in those two things. The minstrel part is more of a vehicle for delivering the concept. It isn't like this album has a dark tone, no pun intended. I'd say it really has the opposite. The entire thing is essentially this performance or show that makes the listener a member of the audience right from the start. The crew gets introduced one by one, and then actor-comedian Chris Hardwick caps off the intro by helping segue into the first actual song as a host of sorts. From this point on, it becomes another one of those albums for me where track after track, the quality just is not letting up. But the thing that's really commendable about this case is it starts right from the word go. Fonte always structures his verses in a way that I really personally appreciate because he's insanely clever, and the way that he'll loop a rhyme scheme back around is super clean. One of my favorite clever little lyrical jabs Fontigolo throws into his first verse on the album is, and Broadway's the only place you'd ever throw a set up. While Fonte is my personal favorite of the two rappers, and subsequently will have more of the verses I'm gonna quote, I have to reiterate that Pooh is a more than adequate rapper. I feel like he can be easy to overlook because he isn't an outwardly flashy lyricist or doing insane verbal gymnastics, but the character and warmth he brings to a track is a really necessary quality to have in hip-hop. To me, he embodies the spirit of the culture. You don't have to be doing like worldwide choppers type verses just to be a legend and have an impact on people. And this shouldn't be interpreted as me just excusing a whack rapper or someone who hasn't practiced. This is an insanely skilled MC who owns only ever has his talents called into question because his verses are side by side with one of the most technically proficient writers in hip hop. The album Rapper Big Pooh, released in 2015, called Words Paint Pictures, produced by prevalent Detroit producer Apollo Brown, is another example of how Big Pooh can excel when he's paired with the right producer. One of my absolute favorite moments on the Minstrel Show that I could not feasibly discuss this album without mentioning is the part skit, part R. Kelly R&B heartbreak parody song Cheatin'. This song is genius without exaggeration, and it's probably the single funniest moment on a hip hop album that I can think of off the top of my head. Fonte displays his genuine talents as a vocalist and soul and R&B singer and channels it into his character Percy Miracles. Percy sings about catching his girl cheating, but he's accompanied by Mr. Diggs, who's literally just a Ronald Isley impersonator. Easily the best lines from this song for me are in the chorus, which are, "You was cheatin', caught you creepin', to the window, to the wall, skeet skeetin'." Using that famous Lil Jon line in the context of an R. Kelly style tale of heartbreak is just something I'll never get over, and it sort of reminds me of the kind of thing De La Soul might do. That feeling of creativity and fun that acts like De La implemented a decade or so earlier wasn't the most profitable thing in hip hop in the early to mid 2000s. Groups like Slum Village or Little Brother showed clear influence from groups like Tribe Called Quest or The Roots, but helped modernize and advance the sound. We really need to thank these artists who stuck to their guns when it came to integrity and keeping the spirit of hip hop alive, while of course still being forward thinking and not wallowing in the past. It's easy to think that guys like Kendrick Lamar, ASAP Rocky, or Joey Badass all just popped up being the first MCs to care about lyrics since the 90s, but in reality, that's ignoring a plethora of quality hip hop that went on in the 2000s. Even with the dozens and dozens of 2000s hip hop classics I have currently to talk about, there's still a number of monumental albums I'm missing from that time, like Supreme Clientele, A Piece of Strange, like Water for Chocolate, or Food and Liquor, just to name a few. But in my opinion, The Minstrel Show is up there with the best of them. And while for my favorites, I have to give honorable mentions to Say It Again, The Becoming, and Cheatin', my three favorite songs would have to be Slow It Down, All For You, and Lovin' It, which probably has one of the best beats of the entire 2000s. I also have to mention the handful of quality features that show up on here, like Yazara, Joe Scudda, Darian Brockington, and Sean Don. Thank you for watching my 27th video. While the next album I'm going to talk about might be a little more familiar to some than the last two I mentioned, I think that it's just as deserving of its placement as any other album in this group. So be sure to tune in to see what that is, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments off of Little Brother's classic second album are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.